Hump day, hump day. It is Wednesday. We're getting closer to that weekend and some more fights. And oh, by the way, Nonito Donaire fight has been postponed to the undercard of Spence versus Crawford. I knew something was up last night when we were talking about the fight, and I went on BoxRec to check some things before the show, and it was off on BoxRec. The fight was no longer up. And on top of that, I went to the betting odds, and the betting odds were no longer there for Saturday. They were there for another date. So I should have read between the lines there and saw that something was coming. So the Nino Donaire fight has been postponed up until the Spence Crawford undercard. So there's two ways to look at that. One is we wanted to see the fight Saturday, obviously, but it makes that undercard stronger because that's a good fight. It's a good 50-50 fight, in my opinion. Shout out Santeo Media, Drunk Irishman. If y'all do one thing for me, make sure y'all are hitting that like button. And we have some things to talk about today that aren't going to be as flashy. They're not going to be as clicky, but so they're not going to bring in the numbers. But however, I think they're good foundational things that we need to speak about. Drunk Irishman, Demetrio G, what up to you? Tyson Fury, Wheelchair Man John in the building, Team Batman Boxing. Always appreciate y'all rolling through. No doubt this Fury fight is a disgrace. The day of reckoning is getting closer. You're going to owe me when Spence beats Crawford. Are you a glutton for punishment? Do you like punishment, Chauncey? Do you like losing money? Do you enjoy handing over money to other people? Is this what you enjoy? This is what you enjoy, because this seems to be something you enjoy. It seems to be something you enjoy, is particularly giving me money after your fighter loses. I'm just saying, man, it's not a good bet for you. And I'm giving you up until ding, 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 opening bell, Chauncey, to pull out of this. I'm trying to help you. I'm giving you until ding, 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 opening bell, Spence Crawford, to pull out of this bet. I'm trying to help you. Bud is a deep sea fisherman. I'm just telling you. Saludos, Jesus M. I'm rich, yes. Good to see Jared Anderson back ASAP, but stepped down way low on opposition. And this is what I'm saying. I talked about this last night, and I wanted to elaborate on some things we were talking about last night. Foundational issues is Jared Anderson. People were critical of his performance, his last performance, and his step-up performance. And my thing is, at this point in his career, people are calling him, when he does something not so good, people shift back into prospect mode. When Jared Anderson is mowing guys down, it's, oh, look at this champion. Look how great this fighter is. Look at the best prospect we got since the 90s. And those things may be true, but when Charles Martin fight happens, and the straight lefts are landing against him, and he wins every round, almost every round. Don't get me wrong, but he possibly shows some issues with punch attrition. Who knows? People shift right back to, oh, he's a prospect. You're being so harsh on a prospect. If we're going to call this guy a prospect, he needs to be more active. There's no such thing as a 2-fight per year prospect, and they went to 2 fights per year in his third year. So my thing is, get this guy back active. It's better for everything. If he's fighting more often, people are going to be less critical of his bad performances. Because we're seeing him more often, we know how to read what type of fighter this guy is. So if he fights Charles Martin and then 2 months later he bounces right back, we're going to be forgiving of the opponent. I don't know much about the opponent. I heard he hasn't fought in almost 2 years. Fair enough. If he's back every 2 months, we'll be more forgiving of the opposition. We'll be more forgiving of the performances. And wait till this guy is really there to where you want to safely call him a contender and possible champion. Until he does that, fight him multiple times per year. Charles Martin being back in late August is good on many levels, but it's also good on the more you keep these fighters active, the more they're going to be in people's faces, the more people are going to be emotionally invested in them and looking for them. And if you put this guy in Ohio every fight until he reaches the top level, I'm telling you, you build regional out. Common sense. Regional out. We're going to talk a lot about these foundational issues on this show, because what happens here is we get good fights, right? We get big fights on, and then people forget about all the foundational issues we have. And we're going to talk about the big fights, and we do. We get excited. We're not one of those nihilistic channels here. We're excited about things. But at the same time, you need to reel people back in that we still need to fix these things. It's great. It is great. It's a white pill that even though we're having these inactivity issues still, even though we're still having these foundational issues with promoters not wanting to co-promote a lot of fights and, this blood versus crip stuff and not keeping fighters active, even though we have a lot of those things, it's still a white pill that we still have a really good schedule in boxing. It's like a governor on a car, right? It's when you put the governor on the car can only go 40% of the actual speed that it's capable of going. We have a governor on boxing and it's set at about 10%. And what I'm saying is let this thing go. Release it. Look at what we're doing. Look at what we're accomplishing in 2023 at 10% capacity in boxing. Imagine if we got this thing up to 40%, 60%. And I know the reason that people don't want to talk about the ills of boxing is because a lot of the guys on the interwebs who have become big are Al Haymanites. They're huge Al Heyman fans, humongous Al Heyman fans. And they can't bring you to, they know it instinctively. They're not going to say it. They realize that since Al Heyman has gotten a lot of power, he's accelerated a lot of the ills. The ills were around before Al Heyman got there, and he's not the only one doing this stuff, but he's accelerated the speed of it. Things have gotten progressively worse. He's been a net negative, even with these big fights being made, and that's why a lot of people don't want to talk about this stuff, but we'll talk about it. It might hurt the clicks. It might do all that stuff, but it is what it is. We'll talk about it. But Jared Anderson being back is good, and him being back quickly is, I don't care who the opposition is. Put him in there with somebody. Let the guy knock somebody out, get a body in a round or two. And if he wants to fight a bigger fight after that, then maybe later on in the year, December, February of next year. But if he wants to keep fighting this type of opposition, get him in there every 2 months. Keep him active. Keep him in people's faces. This guy has star written all over him. That's why I don't get this. I don't understand the marketing. Why are they talking about his dog? Did y'all know Jared Anderson has a dog? He's got a dog named Azul. It's 105 pounds. I know how old it is. I know its hobbies. I know everything about it. Why am I learning about the dog when this dude has star written all over him? And why did he fight twice last year? Why? Why am I learning about the dog? Tell me more about Jared Anderson. Or how about you just get to fights and let this guy mow people down? I don't know. But I'm learning about the dog. I don't give a damn about his dog, Azul. I like dogs, but Azul, whatever. I know the dog's name. I know everything the dog does. I know what the dog eats. Tell me more about Jared Anderson and keep this guy in people's faces. Got done moving. In the immortal words of Danny Glover, I'm too old for this shit. Danny Glover, an interesting fact about that is when Lethal Weapon was put out, and he said that he was only 42 years old. I'm 42 years old. So it's sort of humbling that you hear Danny Glover say that in a movie, and now you're that age, and you're like, oh, now I'm too old for this shit. Good afternoon, Andre. Calix, you think Barboza versus Ramirez will be in Fresno? I think so. I think it'll be in California, and I'm glad. This is why I love this chat, because perfect segues, because this is what I had to talk about right out the bat, right out the gate. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Before I get to activity matters, absolutely it does. Anyone see Mike Tyson highlights from his time on ESPN? Top Rank doing well by Anderson with the definition of stay busy. Al Heyman is a walking RICO act. Boxing is only one of Al Heyman's rackets. Did Al Heyman kill HBO and save Showtime? Wait, Jared Anderson has a dog. Yeah, he has a dog. It's crazy. He's got a dog. No problem fighting bums if you fight them every 2 to 3 months. Did Tio drop the ring belt, or he still have it? Hey, I want to know about his dog. That dog is going to have a 30 for 30 soon. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That dude gets fixated on stuff. And you know who I'm talking about over at ESPN. He gets fixated on a thing, and it's like getting a pit bull off of somebody's arm. He just can't get off of it. It's like he can't. The dog, Vasily Lomachenko's juggling. Did y'all know that Vasily Lomachenko loves to juggle? Did y'all know that? Did y'all know he likes to tie a tennis ball rope around his head and hit the tennis ball? Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that Vasily Lomachenko has unorthodox training, new age training styles? Did y'all know that? Did y'all know Jared Anderson has a dog? Did you know that Teofimo has mental illness? Did y'all know any of this? That dude is fixated on something, and he just can't get off of it. He can't get off of it. So sometimes I'd almost rather Teddy Atlas still be there at ESPN. But yeah, he's got a dog. Shout out my guy, Bruce Gass. Calix kind of disagree with you that, yes, keep Jared busy, but needs to be challenged and learn to grow more. KO a guy in 3 rounds is good for marketing, but doesn't grow a boxer in ring. Here's the thing. It goes back to the Avni Yildirim thing, is you have to put things in proper perspective. People say, oh, Canelo fought Avni Yildirim. He fought him in February. He fought another fight in December, and he fought another fight in May. I see what they're doing with Jared Anderson here. It's Charles Martin. Yep, we stepped him up. We see some things possibly that he needs to grow on. So what do you do to solve those problems? You get him back in the ring. So August, whoever, get somebody up quick, and then you can fight the bigger fight after that. Right? It's putting things in the proper perspective. We'll talk about Tyson Fury in a minute. The issue with Tyson Fury fighting this fight, one of the many issues is what? He's not doing anything else this year, or hasn't. When Muhammad, and they'll bring up Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali fought the exhibition match in between 4 other fights that year. High quality boxing matches, real ones. You have to put things in the proper perspective. Does Tio have a dog? I don't know. Did you know Errol Spence retired Mikey Garcia? Ignore Sandor Martin. Yeah. Here's the thing about Teofimo. Teofimo, I think today will be officially vacating the WBO. He's been given the belt so he can give it up. I'm not sure about the ring, and I'd like to have Dougie on. I think that's one thing I'll try to do next week is have Dougie on and ask him questions like that. What's the process there? What's the process with retirement when it comes to a fighter? What's the grace period? Will this guy be stripped? Will he be vacated? Have the conversations been going on with Teofimo Lopez? That's something I think I'll have him on next week, or try to. And leave me alone, woman. I'm doing a podcast. And I'll try to have him on next week to answer questions like that, because it's questions I have as well. But it looks like he's going to vacate the WBO officially. So that puts in line Ramirez versus Barboza, who are both Rick the Magician Marizan's fighters. And Rick Magician Marizan is called the Magician because he makes big fights disappear. Here's something that could get in the way of that. Barboza would be first, and Haney could step ahead of Jose Ramirez in this process. So it could be Haney versus Barboza for that WBO vacant belt. It could be. And that's the interesting thing about this whole process is when Devin Haney picks an opponent, you'll start to see some dominoes fall at 130 and 135 and 140, right? You have several fighters waiting for that fight to see if they're picked. And Devin Haney, although he's not the big name that a Canelo Alvarez is, you still have a similar process going on to where multiple people want that fight with Devin Haney. And Devin Haney is using his position of power to send these guys deals. And some of these guys are not happy with the proposals that they are receiving. But let's start at the top. Teofimo Lopez wins the belt from Josh Taylor. He's going to vacate it. And it looks like Ramirez versus Barboza will be the fight. That's a good fight. It's a very makeable fight. Both on the same promotional company, both with the same manager. I don't think even Rick Marizan can mess that one up. But I may be speaking too soon. And it's a good fight. And whoever gets that belt will be there'll be a fighter that many fighters will want to fight. I'll just leave it at that. I think stylistic wise, I think a lot of top fighters at 140 match up with those guys pretty well. But those guys are both of them in a good position to get Teofimo's vacant belt after he vacates the belt. But I want to see what's going on with Devin Haney, because the reason, look, when Shakur Stevenson receives this offer for 25% from Devin Haney, I would have liked to have seen Shakur Stevenson call that bluff and say, I'll take the 25%. I'll fight you for all the belts. What other position is Shakur Stevenson going to be in? And I understand how people are going to come at me with this. Oh, 25% is disrespectful. Haney doesn't want the fight, and perhaps he doesn't. I don't know. But what other position is Shakur Stevenson going to be in to where he can take 25% of that pot and get all of the belts in one swoop and call himself undisputed champion? Devin Haney found himself in a similar position. I know he got close to $3 million for the fight, but he got the short end of the split, went overseas twice, and then fought Lomachenko in a high stakes fight that he could have lost. And he came out of that undefeated. Whether we feel he won the Lomachenko fight or not, he came out of that undefeated. He took risks to get him somewhere. And part of that was an email championship, was him being vulnerable, but it's all part of it. He got that. He got to the other side of it as a vulnerable fighter with an email championship belt. He took some risks, and now he's reaping the rewards of that. Now he's the guy saying, offer Lomachenko this, offer Stevenson this, offer Prograis this, perhaps Barboza for a vacant belt. He's got options. You're only as valuable as your options, fellas. Shakur Stevenson, whether it be fair or not, and life isn't fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. I hate to break it to you. But Shakur Stevenson is probably looking at this on the surface and saying, 25%, I'm better than this dude. 25%, this is disrespectful. How dare you send this offer to me? It's disrespectful. And I'm telling you, I've been in similar situations to where I'm looking at things, especially when I was working in the corporate world many moons ago. And I'm looking at this and I'm trying to go in there for a raise and negotiate things, and they're not budging. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this isn't worth this. I shouldn't be working for this. But you have to humble yourself and realize I don't really have many other options at this point in time. I have to take this. In a year from now, I'll be worth a lot more by taking this risk on the front end right here. And I think Shakur Stevenson's in a similar position. Where else does Shakur Stevenson have to go, fellas? Where's he going to go? Who's he going to fight? Who's he going to fight if it's not Devin Haney? And Devin Haney, that's why I say call his bluff, because I'm not so sure if Shakur Stevenson takes that deal that Devin Haney doesn't try to put another poison pill in there, and another poison pill, and another poison pill. I think Devin Haney and his team are very much looking at the situation and the landscape and saying, that's the toughest fight. It's the toughest fight. I'd rather be in a Lomachenko rematch. I'd rather fight Tank Davis if they were to come to the table, even though they're not. I'd rather fight Regis Prograis at 140, as crazy as that sounds. I'd rather fight Barboza for a vacant belt. What other options does Shakur Stevenson have? What other options did Dimitri Bivol have other than Canelo? Now who are they talking about fighting? They're talking about fighting Better Biev's leftovers in Yard. And they may not get that fight. You're only as valuable as your options, not your talent, your options. Shakur simply doesn't have many options at the top level, and it's because of look how talented he looks. But when you're that talented, you're not getting the fights, and the risk isn't meeting the reward. You have to maybe take some gambles early on in your career in order to get where you want. You'll get there quicker. Imagine you fight that fight, and yeah, you don't like the 25%. Yes, it's disrespectful. Yeah, you feel disrespected. Yeah, you go home to your wife and your kids and you say, I can't believe my manager, I can't believe my boss is offering me this for a raise. Why would they do that? Why would they disrespect me to that? I've given so much to the company. I've waited for this position. I know what the guy before me in this similar position was being paid. I'm worth more than that. And you go back and try to negotiate and they don't budge. So you have to go back and humble yourself and take that deal to put it on your resume. And then a year from now, you'll tell them, F off. Now I'm worth this. And now I can go elsewhere and get it. And I think Shakur Stevenson is in that position currently. And he should be calling Devin Haney's bluff. That's just my opinion on it. It's easy to say I would do that in his position. All I'm saying as a boxing fan is I would have liked to have seen him do something like that instead of saying 25% is disrespectful. It's not, though. It's not. It is, but it's not. That guy can go fight Lomachenko. Lomachenko wants to fight him. That guy can go fight Regis. Regis would love that fight. That guy can go fight Barboza for a vacant. He can go in many different directions, and you don't have options because you're so talented. Sometimes life isn't fair that way. Yeah, Mikey got paid. Mikey got paid. Leave alone women. I'm doing a podcast. It's always texting me at the wrong times. Haney's stock has gone down. He lost to Loma, and now he's running from Shakur. I don't agree. I don't agree. He's fielding multiple offers. I think Lomachenko won the fight. I thought Lomachenko clearly won the fight. But to say Haney's stock has gone down, how? How do you say that? It hasn't. It hasn't. That guy's fielding many offers right now. It is what it is. Yeah, it's a good fight. Ramirez Barboza is a good fight. It's a good matchup. Crawford would have took a 25% as long as there is transparency. Let's see what we got. Devin Haney is praying that Teo vacates to run towards the Barboza fight and escape the rematch to Shakur. Possibly. I mean, possibly. That's probably the path of least resistance. And we'll talk about that in a minute when it comes to Virgil and Stanionis, the path of least resistance. And that's not, sometimes that's not the best way to go. There are tougher fights, there are bigger fights, but Barboza is the easier fight, and it's got a reward on it. It's another title. And what has Devin Haney shown that he, much like Canelo, what has he shown that he values? Belts, real belts. And a fight with Barboza for the vacant WBO provides that. And it provides a path of least resistance as well. So we'll see. We'll see. And we'll wait to see what happens. But I think Devin Haney is in a position to where the boxing public, they love to call people duckers. And I think he's in a position to where if he goes in this direction, he's going to be saying he's ducking over here. If he goes in that position, he'll say he's ducking over there. If he stays at 135 and squeezes himself down, he'll say he's ducking guys at 140. If he goes to 140, he'll say he's ducking the smoke at 135. It just is what it is. But the good news for me is all of those fights I love. I like all those fights. And over here, we won't call him a duck if he takes any of those fights. Took the short end of the stick versus Loma, and it did not equate to more money, but actually got lowballed by his own promoter, Aram. We don't know the structure of Shakur's contract. Fair enough. But I'll tell you what, Teofimo is now in a position of power. And part of it is what he did in 2020. It just is what it is. And also, I've been told that Teofimo is lying about what he got paid, HLD. That's just what I'm told. That's what I'm told. And I trust these people who told me that he's lying about what he got paid. That he got paid a lot more than what he's saying he got paid publicly. That's just what I'm told. Calix, I think Aram said the only reason Loma versus Haney was pay-per-view because they had to pay Haney so much. Shakur beats the shit out of Haney. Yeah, probably so. Probably so. Teofimo and Loma made $4 million combined. Don't want to hear no excuses. When you're getting millions for a fight, there is no loss. So Haney gets WBO shot over Ramirez. Yes, he can get that shot. That's what ESPN's reporting. Is he can exercise something to where he can move up from 135 to 140 and go to the top of the line. And then he would fight Barboza over Ramirez. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just saying that's what would spoil that fight. Heard Mikey bought a yacht. Teo made 1.2. Gross versus Loma. Know the facts before you speak. All right. All right. Virgil Stanionis. This will wrap up my feelings on what happened last week and what transpired. This has got to be a lot of empathy behind what happened with Virgil and Stanionis. Virgil with the illnesses, Stanionis. But this is what happens. Things like this can happen when you play the waiting game, when you play the long game. And I just talked about it with Shakur. I talked about it earlier with Path of Least Resistance, with Haney possibly fighting Barboza. When you go these routes, it could potentially bite you in the ass later on. What did Stanionis, Virgil, Boots has been doing it? What did they do? Errol and Bud were at the top, 1 and 2. And for a half a decade, they didn't give us that fight. And the reason they didn't give us that fight, for the people who say undisputed is no longer undisputed, is because they potentially wanted Errol versus Bud to be for undisputed. I've been told undisputed isn't a real thing, but it is in this case. Errol cleans up his side of the street. Bud cleans up his side of the street. It takes them a half a decade. They clean up their both sides of the street, and they're going to fight each other. But in the meantime, you had younger guys like Virgil, Stanionis, Boots, who were in position to not take step-aside money. They were also in position to petition from the mountaintops that, no, I'm in line now. And now I'm in the front of the line. And I can go over here to this sanctioning body. I'm at the top of these rankings and these rankings. It's easier for me to go over here and get that fight. Over here and get that fight. We talked about Benavidez not doing this at 168. If they really want to get the fight with Canelo and force his hand, petition. What does Canelo value? Belts. He doesn't want to lose a belt. Petition. Undisputed is obviously important to him. Petition. They didn't petition. They take step-aside money. And what happens? And I know particularly the Virgil Ortiz fans do not want to hear it. I know we got a lot here, but he was in position to force Errol's hand. He was in position to force Bud's hand. They simply didn't do that. Stanionis is the same thing. Stanionis, they can lie about not taking step-aside money. They've taken step-aside money from Errol and his team multiple times now. And now Stanionis, we're supposed to feel sorry for him because the fight gets canceled again. You play with matches, then fire could happen. It's just the way it is. And you're playing a game of chicken. And now Boots is still playing the vacant game. And now what's going to happen with the Boots in a situation? He looks great on Saturday night, but finally he makes that statement that we've been waiting for him to make. Finally, he gets on a main event. Finally, he's in a packed auditorium. Finally, he entertains, destroys, and it all comes together. But he does that at a time when 147 is not going to be the 147 that we've come to know anymore. Errol, Bud, Virgil, what are they doing? 154. The big fights are about to go over there. So the guy has been waiting around for a vacant belt. And once this vacant belt becomes available, it's not going to be as valuable because the big fights will no longer be at 147. And this is what happens when you wait around in life. I'd rather the guys who take the risks. You take the risks, you're going to get rewarded if things go well on the other side of that. You're going to have a lot of leverage. You're going to have a lot more options. Hold on one second. Sometimes you have to humble yourself on the front end, fellas. Sometimes you have to be willing to take the purse split, even though it's a 35%. And sometimes it doesn't backfire on you because Jose Ramirez, in fairness, he's probably in a better position now than he had he fought Regis Prograis. He would have lost that fight. So now waiting around. Yes, people don't care about him as much as they did a year or two ago, but what's going to happen now? He's likely going to get a spot, but this could also backfire on him as well if Haney decides he wants to jump Jose Ramirez and then he gets the Barboza fight. But at 147, I don't feel sorry for these dudes whose careers have not developed when they've just been sitting around taking easier fights, path of least resistance, instead of pushing for the more important fights because those fights were more dangerous. And it was easier for me to get those belts had I just waited around and waited for them to become vacant. How's that working out for Virgil Ortiz? He's trying to get himself down to 147, 147. And we all know he can't get to 147. And he's got this serious life-threatening illness. And even with that, they're still trying to stretch this dude down to 147. All to get these vacant belts that they've been waiting around for. And then after all these years, what do we have? He's fought once in the past 23 months, and he's got no belts to show for it. If they would have just pushed for these fights, maybe these fights develop. Maybe Rabdo gets in the way before that, but at least we know earlier. And then we moved to 154 earlier. These guys are wasting prime years just waiting around. Shakur has done that. Respect to Shakur for that. He said, let's not wait around. Team, go petition. Go petition. Go give me that fight. Go give me that fight. Yes, respect for that. But also, I would have liked to have seen them be even more aggressive than that and say, yeah, I'll take the 25%. Send it back to him. Sign everything. Your gloves, whatever. Your ring size. You pick the judges, whatever. Give it to him. Give it to him. And then go get that fight. I appreciate this. Before I get into the Tyson Fury thing, and I have some things to say about Spence versus Crawford as well, because I have a lot of stuff to say about the Tyson Fury thing. And let me send the text real quick. We had Tiara Brown on D Styles channel last night in the podcast, and she's talking about how she can't get fights. 15-0, 10 knockouts. So she's one of the exceptions to the female boxing rule that there's no knockouts because she's knocking people out. She's clearly got the gift of gab. And there's a reason why we have the people we have on to interview, because I think people will realize at this point, and it's not capped, that it's not hard to get interviews with big fighters. It's just not. But we rather interview certain fighters because there's a lot of people getting those interviews, and there's not too many people focusing in on those interviews with people who are struggling. And there's a reason we do it, because as boxing fans, I go to a Regis Prograis fight and I see, all right, this guy's struggling to get fights even in his position as a titleist. And a lot of that is due to his business and fairness. But I talked to Oshake Foster there, and he's telling me, dude, I can't get Eddie's attention. Eddie is sitting right there, and he's telling me, go talk to Eddie. Go talk to Eddie and please give me the Joe Cordina fight. He flies down to New Orleans to talk to Eddie, and he can't even get a meeting with Eddie to talk about Joe Cordina. And he's telling me these things. And I talked to Jenny Fuse that week, and she's saying, I can't get fights. The only reason I'm in this fight is because Regis put me on the fight. That's part of the reason he went to Matchroom, is he can put whoever he wants on his undercard, and he did me a favor and put me on the undercard for nothing. Not making anything. And we're talking to Tiara Brown last night, and she's like, dude, I go fight Sky Nicholson for free. Just give me the plane ticket. Pay for my plane ticket, and I'll go fight her for free. And you see these things, and we're asking her questions. She's like, I'll fight once per month. I'll fight 12 times per year. And it's frustrating to see fighters in this position. And it's one of the fallacies out there that the current model is good for the fighters. It's not. It's not. It's not good for anybody but them. And Steven Espinoza can come out all he wants and whine and say, we actually don't make a lot of money off of this stuff. And woe is me. I just, people are stealing things, and, the promoter's actually not making them. They can lie all they want, but they're raping the market. And the fighters at the top, when Tyson Fury makes whatever he's going to make, the gazillion dollars against Ngannou, people are going to say, why are you hating on him getting the bag? I'm not. Fair enough, dude. You got the bag. You position yourself. You leverage yourself into that. Fair enough. But what I'm saying is the pay scale is not good across the board. It's not. You can lie about it all you want, but it's not good across the board. And the things that WBC in particular are doing right now, Jose Suleiman, and holding up weight classes, is not good for the fighters middle down. It's not. And when you talk to struggling fighters out there, when you talk to them, it's a huge like red pill moment. And you realize these dudes are not happy with this system. They're struggling to get to the top. And at that point, they'll flip the board. Fair enough. But down here, they're all complaining about the system. I can't get fights. I can't stay active. People don't know where to find me when I do fight. I'm buried on undercards. Boots Ennis just finally fought the main event. Boots Ennis. How is a dude that talented buried on undercards? How do you have that dude on Tank Davis versus Hector Luis Garcia undercards? And people have the nerve to tell me that these power brokers are doing a great job with these fighters. But I feel sorry for this and for these fighters. And I was trying to tell her last night, this isn't just exclusive to female boxing. It's across the board. It's men's boxing too. When you go out to talk to fighters, they're all struggling with getting fights, staying active. It's just an issue. I've talked to D-Style about this. I've talked to other people on the inside about this. I'm not much of a fan of female boxing in its current state. I'm not. That's not going to stop us from trying and having females on here and giving their stories. Why? Because I go to UFC events and I see them loving the hell out of female fights. And I realize to myself that dudes just want to see fights. At the end of the day, male, female, just want to see fights. The distrust on both sides is we need subsidies. We need to subsidize female boxing until it can live on its own, right? And we need to get those numbers up. I have daughters. I have daughters who are in karate. I have daughters who are in basketball, soccer. So I don't want to send them off to a foreign country in order to compete. I'd like to see them do it here. And that was her frustration last night is American boxing promoters aren't putting anything into our product. And that's my frustration and where we gather and we have similar interests here is we just want to see good fights. You have network exclusivity. If you sign on to the BBC, you are Showtime. If you sign on to Top Rank, you are ESPN. When you sign on to Oscar or Eddie, you are Golden Boy. And that hurts. Why? Because you're not shopping fights anymore. You're shopping fighters. It takes away from the competition between promoters, managers to get certain fights on the network. We need to get rid of that network exclusivity, and I don't know if it'll ever happen. And until we do that, fighters like Tierra Brown will struggle to get fights. You'll have fighters with belts who are still struggling to get unification fights because we're overfunding terrible fights at the top, and it's taking away from the budget. When we could just be putting on good fights with a less budget, better fights with less budget, cut out the fat, and be building stars that way. How do we know what people really like if we're not given options? Maybe I'd like to see Tierra Brown fight. Maybe. But I got to be given that option. The distrust comes when you see the WNBA do this and they complain about not getting fair pay. And they're out of pocket because the dude's telling them, there's a podcast out there when the dude's telling them, dude, if you want fair pay, you'd be giving the NBA $82,000 because that's what your job currently costs. Because the WNBA has been on the red big time since the NBA has been subsidizing it. It still hasn't moved on its own. I'm glad it's out there, but that's the distrust once again, as the other side sees the people who are being subsidized complain about their pay, and they're like, we're giving you a league. We gave you a league. And not even women are supporting it. So we need to subsidize female boxing in particular. We need to put on good fights, and that could be, both of those things can come together. But I feel sorry for these fighters who can't get fights. This current system is not good for the fighters. It's not. Stop letting people lie to you. It's not. It's not. This has been a great year, but imagine what type of year we would have. Imagine what type of year we would have if we just freed this thing. If we operated not just in distrust, is, the good thing is it's decentralized. The bad thing is it's decentralized. Decentralized can be good in that it can cause more competition to put on better fights. But when you take that away, when you take that part of it away with network deals, artificially propping up the market with this pay, and we'll talk about that with Tyson Fury in a minute, it takes away what's good about being decentralized. Tyson Fury. And this is right, Nando. The market has proven that you put on a good product that's going to watch it. It doesn't matter the gender. Female NCAA tournament, the ratings were off the charts. And female NCAA basketball is in a better spot now than it's ever been. WNBA isn't. And it's not for a reason. I don't want to go into the reasons it's not. But I'm just saying, if you give the market something to watch, they're going to watch it. They're going to watch it. Female tennis. I'd rather watch female tennis than male tennis. It just is what it is. There are certain things you'd rather watch, and it doesn't matter the gender. But Tyson Fury, how pathetic is this dude? So Tyson Fury is a great fighter. He's a great fighter. We would all agree he's a great fighter, right? I think everybody in the chat would agree that he's a great fighter. I think he's proven that. The eye test tells us that. He's won some big fights. He won the Klitschko fight. He won the second Wilder fight. He won the third Wilder fight. I felt he won the first Wilder fight. I thought that trilogy ended up being a great trilogy. But speaking of lies, the heavyweight division in its current state is not a great division. It's not. You'll have people out there saying it holds up to previous heavyweight divisions, that this crop is so talented, that these guys are bigger than former heavyweights, so therefore they are better. Heavyweights of the past were smaller and they would not be able to size up to current heavyweights. I've heard these arguments everywhere, and this comes from the top. This comes from journalists at the top. This comes to content creators on the YTBC. They've been trying to spread this propaganda that the current heavyweight division is great, and it's just not. It's not. How does a great division have one top 10 matchup so far in 2023? How is that possible? And somebody can fact check me on that, but I think we've had one top 10 matchup this year. Zhilei Zhang upsetting Joe Joyce, and then they're going to fight again. But Zhilei Zhang currently has the best win of 2023 of all the current heavyweights. For years, we've been this close, one fight away from undisputed, and we can't get it. And one guy in particular has been in position to get that undisputed crown. One guy. And he keeps shit in the bed. And don't doubt me on this. One of the reasons why you'll see a lot of people out there currently trying to warp undisputed and act like there is no four-belt era, even though we always say there's a four-belt era. This is the four-belt era. It's a four-belt era. It's a four-belt era. They'll tell you, no, there's no four-belt era. There's no four belts. We don't know what undisputed is. Yeah, Teofimo is undisputed. How's he undisputed? He's got one belt. Oh, it's just because we know he's the guy. Well, that's lineal. No, he's undisputed. All right, he's undisputed, whatever. But this guy, part of it is you'll see Tyson Fury fans out there trying to warp undisputed because they know this guy's been so close to undisputed so many times and he can't deliver it. He refuses to deliver it. I don't like champions who don't behave like champions, even if they're great. There's no doubt Tyson Fury's great. There's no doubt about that. But at some point, there's a difference between being a great fighter and a great champion. That's the reason, one of the reasons the 90s Bulls are so beloved. and why that documentary did what it did is Jordan got it and he wasn't happy with getting it. He had to come out and defend it. Then he had to come out and defend it again. Retired to go to baseball, but then he had to come out and defend it again and defend it again and defend it again. And had ownership not done what it did, he would have came out and defended it again. Levels. They're great fighters. They're great athletes. They're legendary athletes. And the legendary athletes become champions. And then when they become champions, they behave like champions. Jordan behaved like a champion. He behaved like a guy who said, yes, I'm supposed to be the hunted here, but I'm going to continue to behave like the hunter. I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to hunt me. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm coming after you. I'm behaving like I'm broke. I'm behaving like it's one of the reasons I value Canelo once again. I'll give you 2 more reasons I value Canelo as a boxing fan. Just as a boxing fan, is Canelo is above what Tyson Fury is doing now and what Floyd Mayweather did a decade ago with Conor McGregor. And how do I know that? Because he's 63 fights in, 18 years in, almost 2 decades, and he hasn't done that yet. And you know he's gotten the offers. Eddie wanted him to do these fights. DAZN wanted him to do these fights. He's not doing them. I'm sure they're trying to throw him astronomical amounts of dollars, pesos, to do these fights. He's like, no, I'm going to go fight the real fights. I value that Canelo likely sees, just from the outside looking in, he likely sees the crossover market as beneath him. It's beneath me. Why would I fight that? Why would Jake Paul? Why would I fight that guy? Why would I fight Conor McGregor? Why? Why would I do this? He's going to go fight real fights. You might not always be happy with the fights because you're going to be miserable regardless, but he's fighting real fights. He's fighting real boxers. He's not fighting a guy 0-0 as a champion. I don't understand why this is a thing. But one thing I can definitively tell you at this point, Tyson Fury, what's he, 34? Something like that. One thing I can definitively tell you with track record is that guy's a terrible champion. He's an awful champion. Awful. Particularly, there's a certain aura that's supposed to come along with being the heavyweight champion or a heavyweight champion, unfortunately, a heavyweight champion. There's an aura that's supposed to come along with that. And it's not what we're seeing with Tyson Fury. And that's why I'm not trusting, is I was trusting in 2014. I was saying that dude just outboxed Vladimir Klitschko. And yeah, Klitschko might be older. I get it, but he beat Klitschko at his own game. That's a talented dude. I want to see what he's going to do going forward. But that guy looks great. And then what does he do? He disappears. So then he comes around again, and then, you know, the build up with the tune-up fights, and then he fights Wilder, and you say, he did it again. Good for him. But the track record is what? He's going to disappear again. It's almost like he lures you in to let you down. Lures you in to let you down. You want to see dependable, sustainable champions, and he can't provide that. And that's what the heavyweight division has been lacking. Is Klitschko gave you that. As boring as he was, he gave you that. You had the power struggle of the heavyweight division into the 90s, early 2000s, but Lennox ended up being that dude, right? You had great fighters do great things, and you could tell they were in with other great fighters, and they battled each other. The heavyweight division hasn't been giving us that. It's been giving us some entertainment, but it hasn't been giving us sustainable champions. Anthony Joshua, I don't think can be that guy. I like Joshua. He can't be that guy. Tyson Fury refuses to be that guy. Maybe Usyk can be that guy, but even Usyk fights once per year. Even Usyk, after he fights, you're like, when am I going to see this fighter? When am I going to see this guy again? When? This is the frustration with the heavyweight division. And to me, Fury versus Ngannou is a microcosm of what the division is. It's you have a heavyweight champion with all of this there. And fair enough, man. Oh, he's got to wait for the Saudi bag. And that's what I told you is the bad part about the Saudi thing is You got to wait for fights to develop because there's so much money involved. They got to get everything together. And then on top of that, I've been told that they can only do fights certain parts of the year because of the climate and the weather over there. So you got to wait for fights. And it takes forever to develop. And that's going to be the issue is they want to invest in heavyweight boxing in particular. And that's part of the problem with the heavyweight division right now is they could have done Fury versus Usyk in Wembley or wherever, put it where it belonged and still made a lot of money. But Saudi is a lot of money. So it holds up the process. And that's my frustration with WBC and Mauricio Suleiman is he continues to pander to this behavior. He continues to say, Jamal, you can keep your belt indefinitively. Just keep your belt as long as you want. Mental health problems, keep your belt. And other fighters are sitting around and saying, what am I doing here? I'm held up in the rankings because this dude doesn't want to fight and you're pandering to that. You're allowing him to do that. And it's the same thing here. Mauricio Suleiman comes out and says, Tyson Fury can't get fights. He can't get the Usyk fight. He tried so hard. He couldn't get the Anthony Joshua fight. He tried so hard. He couldn't get a mandatory. He tried so hard. Am I supposed to sit here and believe that? Am I supposed to sit here and believe that Tyson Fury sat down and tried to make all these fights and they just all fell apart? So Francis Ngannou's there. Let's just do that one and fight the guy who's 0-0. With the track record, am I supposed to believe that? This guy has 6 defenses in his career that I'm aware of. 6 or 3. It's 3. He has 3 defenses in his career. I think 6 title fights as a heavyweight champion. And I'm supposed to believe that he sat down in good faith, tried to have these negotiations. Am I supposed to believe that, or am I supposed to believe that Francis Ngannou was the guy from the very beginning? It's a tune-up fight, Calix. Fair enough. Fair enough. If this is a tune-up fight you want to see, fair enough. 0-0, 10-round fight. Why in the world is there a market for seeing a boxer fight a non-boxer in boxing rules to see who's better at boxing? Can somebody explain this to me? I'm questioning the market here. I understand there's a market. I understand there's a market for this. I understand that this is going to do numbers. I get all that. I understand the bag part of it, but the sport part of it, explain it to me. Explain to me why it's interesting, intriguing to see who's better at boxing between a boxer and a non-boxer. Explain it to me. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. For the people out there saying that this is a good fight and it's interesting to you. Why is that interesting? You know, it would be interesting to me if this was actually a crossover fight. That would be interesting to me. If Francis Ngannou was allowed to kick, let Francis Ngannou kick. Put it in an octagon. Or if you don't want to allow him to kick, put it in an octagon with 4-ounce gloves. Then we'll see. Let's see. Do some crossover shit if there's a real crossover fight. But this is a boxing match, fellas. It's not a crossover fight. It's a boxing match between a boxer and a non-boxer. And I got the dudes telling me, we're going to see who's better between the boxer and a UFC guy. What do you mean? At what? At boxing. How do you think that's going to go? Fellas, do y'all like WWE? Then go watch WWE. Why do I need to see it in my boxing? Why do I need to see a boxer carry an MMA fighter until he doesn't? Floyd versus Conor. Why? Let Ngannou kick. Let him kick the living shit out of Tyson Fury. Please let that happen. I would love to see Francis Ngannou do it. I'd love to see him get in the ring and say, fuck the rules, and just kick him in the head. I would love to see that. Forgive me. But these crossover fights, what is this? It's not a crossover fight for number one. Why is this intriguing to you? Is the market this dumbed down to think that Francis Ngannou, because for something to be interesting, right, there has to be some intrigue to it. And for there to be intrigue, there has to be some mystery behind it. There's no mystery behind this. I went through this a decade ago, and I was hoping it would go away. The UFC guys saying, Conor can hit. Conor can hit. Oh, he can hit. Yeah, okay. We'll see if he can set up the punches with 8-ounce gloves or 10-ounce gloves, whatever they were. We'll see if he can do it in a boxing ring, in a square circle. And he gets in there, and you saw what happened. And now you have people saying Francis Ngannou can hit. I know he can hit. What do you think is going to happen? You know who else can hit? Deontay Wilder. And how'd that go? Where's the intrigue here, fellas? What is this? Somebody go find me 150 in BoxRec right now and put the name in the chat. Whoever is number 150 at heavyweight in BoxRec, I don't care who it is, that guy beats Francis Ngannou. I'm telling you right now, and nobody else is going to tell you that, but it's the truth. 150 in BoxRec, whoever it is at heavyweight, pick the name, put it in the chat. That guy beats Francis Ngannou and does it easily. Nobody else is going to tell you that, but it's the truth. We're talking about a retired UFC fighter, fellas, and he can't ground and pound. He can't roll around the ring half naked with Tyson Fury. He can't. He can't backhand if they can do that, whatever they do. I don't know. He can't hammer fist, right? He can't kick. He can't do spinning kicks. He can't do Superman kicks. He can't leg check. He can't do any of that, right? Okay, so what's interesting? What's interesting about this? And then you're going to hear the Tyson Fury fanboys. But he's getting the bag, though. He's getting the bag. What percentage of that bag are you getting? 0? Okay. Why is that interesting? I understand he's getting the bag. Good for him for leveraging himself into a 0-0 fight where he's going to get a hellacious bag. But once again, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that this is somehow, everything's connected. Everything in life is connected. That's simple science. You can't say, I'm going to go over here and do this, and it's not going to affect anybody, because it affects everything everywhere at every moment. You can't say this guy's going to go over here and get a hellacious bag in a fight he's fighting a guy who's 0-0, and it's not going to have some sort of effect on the sport. That's number one. Number two, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have the good that comes along with fighting a guy who's 0-0 and making that hellacious bag, and then disconnect the bad that comes along with that. You're fighting a guy who is 0-0. That's a hit on your legacy. I'm sorry. Just like it was a hit on Floyd's legacy. I understand he got 9 figures. I understand he paid for generations to come in his family. I get it. I understand why he went over in there and did that, but don't tell me there's no bad that comes along with that. Don't tell me there's no bad that comes along with fighting Conor McGregor as a boxer in a boxing match. You assumed 0 risk. There were tougher fights out there. And it's the same thing here. You're not behaving like a champion. This is a hit to your championship legacy. You fought Dillian White, Derek Chisora, and Francis Ngannou. What a gauntlet. Oh my God, what a 3-fight gauntlet. What a great fighter. Sorry. It's a terrible champion. Tyson Fury, I'll say it again. I'll say it a million times. This dude is a great fighter, but he is a god-awful, terrible, hellaciously bad champion. He's a terrible champion. And I'll say it for those in the back, the Tyson Fury fanboys, the stands. Your favorite fighter is a terrible champion. I'm sorry. I was once a fan. I'm off. I'm off the bandwagon. It's awful. It's bad. I can take the stuff he says out of the ring. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. But the equation has to match up. You have to get enough good to offset the bad, and we're not. It's way off. It's out of whack. We say it with Teofimo Lopez, right? Yeah, he went on a run. He went on a run there at 135. He did great things. Then he does this at 140. Right now, the positives are outweighing the negatives of Teofimo Lopez. What comes with off the ring stuff, with the retirement, all that stuff. But I still trust that guy will be back. And when he's back, he'll be in big fights and he'll live up to the hype in those big fights. And Tyson Fury does that, but he does it too far and few and far in between. Just does. It takes too long to develop, fellas. Even if a movie has a great ending, if it's 5 hours long, it took you 5 hours to get to that. It takes me 3 to 5 years to get to a big fight for you. And I have to put up with this in between? Francis Ngannou? Seriously. Francis Ngannou. Where's Beeb? Shout out my guy Beeb. I love Beeb. I do. He's awesome. But I don't get some of the arguments with undisputed, non-undisputed, and I don't get some of the stuff that comes with Tyson Fury. It's just it's tough to watch, man. It's tough to watch Tyson Fury and what's been happening with him because there's so much potential. There was so much potential with his career, and a lot of it was shit it away. The good news is the boxing public, I think, has a short memory, and I saw this with Andre Ward. Andre Ward goes on the Super Six, wins it, and he wasn't the favorite going in, and has a good run at 168, and then he starts suing his promoter, even when his promoter was dead. And his promoter, who, by the way, set him up nice in that Super Six tournament to where he didn't have to leave his state. It was like Andre Ward was on house arrest. It was like he had an ankle monitor. He didn't have to leave Oakland. The furthest he had to travel when everybody else was traveling to different countries in this tournament, the furthest this dude had to travel was Atlantic City in the championship. And then he has this huge gap in his career. And then he comes back. He's sending fake deals to fighters 2 divisions lower than him. And then he says he has to fight 3 tune-ups before he gets to Sergey Kovalev. And then he arguably loses that fight. I would argue he lost that fight. And then he knocks Sergey Kovalev out and retires as an undefeated fighter. And look at how people view Andre Ward now as this great champion, one of the greatest fighters of his era. So the boxing public is forgiving. And it does have a short memory. So that's the good news for Tyson Fury. But he still has to step on it. But I don't understand the market, though. I don't understand the market for a dude who looks like Shrek, looks like an ogre, and he talks way more than he fights. And the fights he's been giving us aren't that good. And now he's going to fight a retired MMA fighter in boxing rules when there are other fights on the table that I'm supposed to believe that in good faith he was trying to negotiate. So the good news for Tyson Fury is he's going to get a bag. And this could be a glorified tune-up for a fight that he possibly gets in December, January for Usyk. And who knows? Possibly they already know that fight's going to happen. That's the good news for him is all could be forgiving if he does win undisputed later on this year or early next year. That's the good news for him. That's just the reality of the situation. But what is this? And I had people explaining it away. Okay, I get it. But as a boxing fan, I want to be careful here because different strokes for different folks. And I shouldn't be trying to talk people out of what they're intrigued by and what they're interested in. And there's a market for this. It just is what it is, man. But I think boxing would be in a better place overall if this market would go away. If it would just go away. If fighters would, and this is a hard thing to say because I'm a capitalist, so I don't want to talk dudes out of getting their bag. And I'm not going to say what I would do in their position, but I would love for them to come to a gentleman's agreement in boxing and say, fuck that market. We're not going to engage in that. This whole who's better, what's better, what's better fighting, boxing or MMA, boxing or UFC, it's dead. Nobody engages in that really anymore. It's not interesting. And on top of that, if you're going to try to solve that problem, you have to do it in a real crossover fight. And this isn't a crossover fight. You're solving the problem that you're solving, the problem that you're claiming to solve here. Who's the baddest man on the planet? You're not solving. If you want to figure out who's the baddest man on the planet as far as fighting, you have to mix the rules. And you're not mixing the rules. You're figuring out who is the better boxer between a guy who is 30-something and 0 and a guy who is 0-0. Has somebody figured out who's number 150 in BoxRec yet? Have we figured that out? Because that guy beats Francis Ngannou. He does. I didn't see it in the chat. I don't know if somebody figured that out, but whoever is 150 in BoxRec beats Francis Ngannou. This doesn't solve anything. And that's the part that's confusing to me, is why are we intrigued by something that doesn't solve anything? And I'm not sure why is it entertaining? Do you really think these two dudes are going to stand in the middle of the ring and play Rock'em Sock'em Robots? And if they do, how do you think that's going to go? How's that going to go? I mean, if this was in an octagon with 4-ounce gloves or 6-ounce gloves, whatever they use with those little things, then that would be a little more intriguing. I'm still sure I know how that would go, but still, if the dude was allowed to kick, it'd be intriguing. But seeing who's better between a boxer and a non-boxer at boxing, what are y'all doing out here? What is this? But he's going to get his bag. Good for him. Go get your bag, Tyson. And go get your bag. I just don't understand why this is interesting at all. Yeah, at least James Toney went in the cage. At least he went in the cage. So that's all I got today, man. I'll be back tomorrow and talk more. And I know this was more a negative show, but we'll get into more positive things, especially with the fights coming 2 weeks from now, man. Beautiful stuff. Spence Crawford, beautiful stuff. It's later than it should have been, but still beautiful stuff. And on top of that, the fight I'm most intrigued by this year, since it was announced, is Inoue versus Fulton Jr. And that's the crazy thing about Spence versus Crawford, is it may not even be the best fight of that week. People are out there calling that the fight of the century. It might even not even been the fight of that week. Inoue versus Fulton Jr. My God, what a fight that is. On that note, I'm out. See y'all tomorrow. Peace.